He was the man who chose his name on the poster over the people who put it there, and that choice now hurt more than any guitar riff could. The charity night at Madison Square Garden, set up to honor their dead drummer, threatened to become a trial because Jaden Mills no longer kept quiet, and the label's lawyers demanded he stick to a script that turned truth into blur. The stakes were simple and frightening. If he hid again behind money and the sentence, "It's just business," he would lose his daughter for good. If he told the truth, he would lose a portion of his power and income, but might finally regain the right to look people in the eye. Nathan Carter had become famous at 26 when the debut album crashed into the charts and lodged there longer than anyone expected, and he liked the explanation that it was his gravelly voice and spotlight magnetism because it fit his childhood idea of leadership. He was the front man and then quickly a producer before he learned to say no to the lawyers who placed convenient papers in front of him. In those early years, he kept credits to himself on songs that had in fact been built in garages and kitchens, a riff laid down while someone watched a kettle whistle, or a chorus stumbled onto while someone beat a rhythm on a tabletop. He also pushed the band into contracts that hurt them but helped him, trading group leverage for a solo deal and endorsement exposure, and the explanations felt rational then because they were framed in percentages and guarantees. It had been more than 10 years. They toured, regrouped, and toured again. Hannah divorced him because she was exhausted by his constant absence and by the way every ordinary conversation at home turned into a logistical problem or a press rehearsal. Their daughter May grew up between calendars, and he saw her less often than he saw any guitar tech. After Tom, the quiet-hearted drummer who anchored everything without asking for attention, died suddenly, they decided to do a benefit to turn grief into scholarships for young players, which was decent and practical, but the date pulled other threads tight. Jaden wanted public fairness. The label wanted a clean broadcast. Late autumn settled over New York with wet streets and curt wind. Yellow cabs threw slush against curbs. Deli coffee steamed from thin paper cups. Nathan lived in a brick loft with a stubborn fire escape outside the window, and the kind of echo that made success feel like an illness. That morning he went to the label's conference room with a concrete goal: finalize language that allowed the live broadcast and left him a small gap to say something unscripted at the end. The obstacle arrived in a neat folder. The legal draft praised our shared history and challenging times, and named no names and addressed no past deals. "We ask you to adhere to the text," said the label's attorney, a precise woman whose bangs were a straight, level idea. "Any deviation creates exposure because multiple parties may sue." "And what about our side?" said Jaden, who entered without knocking and leaned against the wall as if it were a position rather than a surface. "Your side is already protected by the agreements Nathan signed," she said. Nathan listened and felt irritation and shame rise together because he saw the machine he had helped build now shielding his money but not his conscience. Was it too convenient to be safe? Was he asking others to take the punch while he hid behind a stamp? He agreed to the broadcast with no confessions written on paper, but he understood that the agreement solved nothing that mattered. The short conclusion of the scene was clear. Legal safety removed the point of the concert, and he could finally see the contradiction without flinching. They rehearsed at the empty garden in the afternoon, and even empty seats were heavy. The goal was simple: run the last 3 songs clean and honest, bring back the weight that fans expected when Tom's kit used to speak. The obstacle announced itself as soon as they hit the bridge. Jaden clipped the tempo and then stopped it with his hand. "Let's play it the way we wrote it, not the way you recorded the credits," he said. "We recorded it that way because you missed the studio night," Nathan said, and his voice came out colder than he wanted. "I missed that night because I was driving your kid from the studio to Hannah at 3 in the morning while you played the hero for an energy drink," Jaden said. Nathan felt an old, tired lock snap inside him. He was ready with a dozen technical defenses about schedules and studio hours and interpretation, but every one of them was a fig leaf over theft. He watched the riggers tape down another cable. He watched a runner carry a crate of water bottles. He watched a stagehand polish a cymbal that would never welcome Tom's hands again. He asked for 15 minutes of silence, and nobody argued. The conclusion of the scene was sobering. Without trust, a perfect arrangement would only expose how hollow the center had become. After rehearsal, he went to May's school because he wanted to hand over tickets and see her face even for 3 minutes. His target was an ordinary act that would signal care without asking for applause. The obstacle was the shield Hannah had learned to use. "Do not turn this into a gesture," she said, holding a paper grocery bag with apples and spiral notebooks. "If May wants to come, she will reach out." "Tell her I left 2 backstage passes," he said. "She knows how to read, Nathan," Hannah said. "She also knows how to tell when you are ticking a box." He nodded and felt like a teenage culprit. How do you show a child that you are changing when you did not change for a decade? The rhetorical question hung there because he had no answer good enough to say out loud. He sensed in his chest the close-together feelings he usually avoided naming: guilt, fear, and a strange intention that had not found its action yet. The end of the scene was plain. Stadium gestures would not move May. She needed truth that did not come with laminate credentials. He returned to the loft that evening, turned on the desk lamp, and took out the old acoustic that had started this entire life. The goal was naive, but pointed. Write a few sentences he could say at the end, if he decided to, and see if he could keep them free of PR perfume. The obstacle sat in his inbox. 2 emails flagged urgent from the label, 1 spreadsheet from his financial manager, tidy columns translating confession into specific losses. 1 polite nudge from a television partner about reputation continuity. He set down a deli coffee that had gone lukewarm, bit into the cold half of a bagel with cream cheese, and typed, "My name is Nathan. I did many things right, and now I will talk about the ones I did wrong," then erased it because it sounded like press release medicine. Who did his silence serve? His brand, the label, the myth of leadership, or Tom's memory? He felt fear and resolve at the same time, and the combination looked ridiculous on paper, but real in the room. He tuned the guitar by habit and hated himself for reaching for a tuned instrument to avoid writing honest words. The end of the scene was blunt. If he spoke, he would need to do it without the cushion of elegant phrasing. The words would have to be ordinary and direct. The next day he rode in a black van with curtains, mint lozenges on the seat, a coil of spare strings by his foot. The goal was to keep the band on the rails until showtime. The obstacle took the shape of a short conversation. "I will play everything right," Jaden said, looking at his fingers. "But after the show, I will post the emails and the demos, not out of revenge, out of fatigue." "That will be war," Nathan said. "No," Jaden said. "That will be the end of your war with reality." Nathan's phone buzzed. The lawyer texted that a representative from the broadcast partner would be waiting in his dressing room, and that improvisation will be treated as breach. He felt anger and fear, but also relief, because external pressure removed the nonsense of choice. Delay now led to an outcome he did not control. The scene's short conclusion was stark. Postponement had stopped working. The timer was not his anymore. During soundcheck, he made a practical offer to Jaden because he decided that words without shape led to nothing. The goal was to present a framework, reallocate credits and royalties on 3 songs: Fifth Street, October Lullaby, and Hands of Time, announce it in a press release in 2 days, and seed Tom's scholarship fund with $1 million of his own money. The obstacle was 1 sentence. "I believe words on stage, not in press PDFs," Jaden said. "You want a public confession?" Nathan said. "I want you to call things by their names," Jaden said, "and I want May to see a man who corrects, not a man who spins." Nathan looked at the set list taped to the stage, at the plastic cup with venue water, at the cold bottles of a sponsor he had dragged them into. He finally asked himself why 4 syllables of "I was wrong" had been so hard for him when he had thrown 5,000 syllables at journalists for a decade. The conclusion was tight. There would be no private trust unless he planted truth in public ground. An hour before the show, he sat in the dressing room, where the table held wet wipes, a pile of faceless makeup pads, a fruit plate nobody wanted, and a small photo of Tom taped to the mirror. The goal was narrow: keep himself together, not cry too early, reach May. The obstacles arrived on schedule. The broadcast manager phoned to say they were counting on discipline. A message from Hannah read, "We're watching at home. Don't surprise me in the worst way." He called May and heard an "Hello, too adult for 12. "If you hear something strange, know it matters," he said. "Strange is what you are best at," she said, and hung up. His heart hurt at that small jab, because it was accurate and honest and not unkind. He wanted to apologize immediately, the way people do when they finally decide that being understood is more important than being defended. The scene's conclusion approached quietly. His primary audience was not sponsors or critics. It was one tired child who could detect posture from 2 neighborhoods away. When the house lights dropped and the first drum track pulled the room tight, he did his job. He gave the first numbers what they required, and somewhere between comfort and fear, he reached the jump where the final song would live. The goal changed from performance to integrity: stop the show and speak without armor. The obstacle was a stack of signals. The director barked guidance in his ear. The time strip at the edge of the stage ran its hard parade of seconds. A tour manager shouted in the mic channel, asking him to hold pace. He did not answer. He moved to the lip of the stage and raised his hand. He stopped the show before the last song and spoke. His voice shook and then steadied because he finally accepted that beautiful language would not save him. "My name is Nathan," he said. "I am not here only to sing. I am here to acknowledge debts." Several of our songs were written together, and the credits named only me. That was wrong. I took co-authorship that wasn't mine and pushed contracts that paid me first while people next to me paid the cost. That destroyed trust, and that broke us as a family. I could excuse it with schedules and fear of losing airtime, but that would be another lie. He paused and surprised himself by telling small truths, because ordinary details measured responsibility better than big statements. "Truth is not only the big stage," he said. "It is picking up your kid from school yourself instead of pushing the errand onto friends. It is returning keys when you move out and not keeping a secret set because you are afraid to be forgotten. It is buying new strings with your own cash when you pop them in anger, not asking a tech to fix your mood. It is paying for the late-night pizza and calling the next day to apologize to the delivery guy because fatigue is not an alibi. It is showing up to rehearsal on time and saying, 'Thank you,' instead of, 'That's how it should be.' It is saying to the man you started with, Jaden, 'I was wrong.'" He turned toward Jaden, kept it plain. "You wrote those riffs," he said. "Your name will be where it belongs. I signed the orders. We are reallocating credits and royalties on 3 songs: 5th Street, October Lullaby, and Hands of Time. My share goes down. I am placing $1 million into Tom's fund and giving a percentage of my solo shows every year. I am stepping off the board of the Masters Company because it is a conflict of interest. I will spend Wednesdays and Saturdays with May. No phones and no scheduling games. I am canceling the endorsement deal that once made us move rehearsals. The label may be unhappy. That is my responsibility, not theirs." He paused again, then finished with words he wished someone had handed him years ago. "Money does not wash betrayal," he said. "If I do not name my fault, return the debts, and change my behavior, I will end up alone even at the top. I do not want that place. I want to stay here, with you. But honestly. His voice was not handsome. It was human. The song that followed opened like a door that had stuck for years. He turned, nodded to the band, and they moved into October Lullaby, and the chorus held less finesse and more meaning. The day did not start at the Garden, not really. It started weeks before with another rehearsal that ended in a sterile argument in a rented studio whose window admitted only a rectangle of warehouse air. The goal then had been to prepare a tribute medley that would carry Tom's photograph across screens without telling a lie about their past. The obstacle had been Nathan's reflex to commandeer even the grief, which Jaden caught and named. "We are not curing ourselves with footage," Jaden said. "We are paying for our flight with Tom's memory." "We are raising real money for scholarships," Nathan said. "We are doing both," Jaden said. The conclusion had been uncomfortable and accurate. They were using an act of kindness to present themselves, and the only way to correct that was to make the kindness real and the presentation not the point. There had been a podcast, too, a week before, with a host whose brand was candor. The goal there had been to steer conversation away from credits without sounding evasive. The obstacle had been the host's calm research. "There are demos from 2012 with Jaden's name in the file names," the host said. "Then your solo record used 2 of those motifs." "Demo names are not legal claims," Nathan said. "Legal claims are often not moral truths," the host said. Nathan left that studio with the old sourness in his mouth because someone had spoken a sentence he had been avoiding. He told his manager he would not do more of those shows and stayed up clicking through old folders and called it due diligence, and felt instead that he was scraping at a scab instead of cleaning the wound. The scene's short conclusion was harsh. Public spaces were starting to speak plain facts back at him, and his controlled answers were shrinking. Tom's wife had reached out after that podcast, gently. The goal of their meeting had been simple: bring her the first check, get her input on the scholarship rules, not turn it into a photo opportunity. The obstacle was Nathan's fear that any move could be mistaken for a stunt. At a small coffee shop near the school playground, she folded the check without looking at the number. "He would like that kids will buy drumsticks with this money," she said. "He would like it more if the credit lined up with the truth." "I know," Nathan said. "Knowing and changing are different verbs," she said, not meanly. He felt the familiar thud of a thing he could not dodge. He promised to attend the high school jazz night as a normal person and not as a guest, and then he forced himself to sit on a metal bench for a few minutes and do nothing. The conclusion was simple. He could not buy clarity with generosity. He would have to earn it with change. His financial manager had also tried to do his job. They met in a glass office above a street where men sold umbrellas and women sold roasted nuts, and someone argued about a parking ticket in the steady New York rain. The goal was to learn the numbers he was about to move. The obstacle was the way numbers, once spoken, turned into small laws. "If you redistribute credits retroactively, you lose this revenue shelf," the manager said. "If you step off the board, you lose leverage on future licensing. If you break the endorsement, we will pay a penalty." "If I do not do it, I lose something else," Nathan said. "Something we cannot tally." "I am not here to talk you out of it," the manager said. "I am here to put the concrete beneath your feet." Nathan appreciated the professionalism and still hated the way spreadsheets could turn an apology into a calculated choice. He walked out with a printed page he did not want to hold and shoved it into his jacket pocket, and the paper corner scratched his palm all afternoon like a silent memo. The conclusion: even honest decisions collect costs, and pretending otherwise is yet another lie. A fan encounter on the sidewalk had stung more than he expected. The goal had been to leave the building without attention. The obstacle was a teenager with a battered backpack and a marker. "Sign my guitar," the kid said. "It is not mine yet, but when I get one, I will paste this on it." "What is the point of a signature on paper?" Nathan said, too sharp. "It is proof I met you," the kid said. "Would you still want it, after you learn more about me?" Nathan asked before he could stop himself. The kid blinked. "If I waited to be pure to like anyone, I would like nobody," the kid said. "Just do not be a fake." Nathan signed and pressed a fold of cash into the kid's palm and said not to spend it on a guitar if the rent needed help. The kid said, "My mom does the rent. I will buy strings." Nathan thought about strings for the next 10 blocks and how many he had broken while insisting he was right. The scene's conclusion was short. People did not need him flawless, but they needed him to stop acting like failure had no repair. He went to the cemetery once, alone, without calling anyone. The goal was clarity. The obstacle was habit. He wanted to perform even there, the way he had performed sorrow at other funerals, by choosing tasteful words and avoiding silence. He stood in front of the small, honest stone and said Tom's name. He said, "I am doing the fund, and I am naming the songs, and I am scared of doing it live." And the wind on that bare patch of grass made all sentences feel the same size. He hated the drama of talking to a stone, but found himself grateful for the boundary it gave him. Nobody was there to applaud. Nobody was there to argue. He asked himself the one question that mattered. If Tom could come back for a minute, what would he ask me to do? And the answer was not a speech, but a task list. Go home, call your ex-wife and listen. Buy dinner for your kid and cook it yourself. Admit the obvious. Return what you took. The scene ended with a little less noise inside his head. The list was plain. The work was plain. The risk was acceptable. There had been a moment with the label's emissary, too. The goal of that conversation had been to minimize damage because television hates variables. The obstacle was that he did not have a vessel for half-truth anymore. "If you go off script," the emissary said, "we will have to pull the replay and issue a statement." "Issue it," Nathan said. "Make it honest," Jaden added, appearing in the doorway. The emissary gathered his papers and changed tactics because the room had 2 men in it, and one of them had nothing to hide. "There are better channels to do this," he said. "No," Nathan said. "There are easier channels. Better is live." The scene ended with a decision no longer on the table as a maybe. It sat in his mouth as a line he knew he would speak. The city around all of this stayed normal in the way a big city stays normal even when someone inside it is falling apart and putting himself back together. Yellow cabs made their jittery diagonals. A woman in a wool hat bought a bag of hot chestnuts while shouting into her phone about a child's homework. Coffee in thin paper cups traveled up and down blocks as if caffeine were currency more stable than money. Nathan bought one of those coffees and a ham and egg on a toasted roll and ate it standing in a deli doorway that smelled like bleach and onions. He thought about how many mornings he had assigned the most ordinary work of care to other people because he told himself he was busy doing something important. He thought about the time in the early days when Jaden had showed up with new strings and a new cable and a sandwich in a brown bag because Nathan had snapped at everyone and then stormed out. He had forgotten the apology, but the sandwich wrapper had ended up under his car seat, and he had pretended that meant the apology wasn't necessary. The scene's conclusion was unsentimental. He could not fix memory, but he could change habit. By the time the night arrived, he had already walked through a dozen small commitments he would not announce out loud, because announcing them too early would turn them into performance. He would order groceries and cook, not deliver. He would text May on Thursdays without waiting for permission, but the text would ask what help she wanted, rather than declaring a plan. He would stop taking the first cut from every joint account like a tax and treat money like a tool instead of a scoreboard. He would appear less on panels about artist entrepreneurship and share the microphone on panels about artist credit, even if he did not look like a hero there. He would apologize to a bassist they had fired too quickly, He would call a sound engineer he had humiliated. He would pay a back invoice he had pretended to dispute because the corporation can handle it. The scene's conclusion was practical. Noble sentences are fragile. Only repeated actions would keep anything upright. All of that hung around him when he lifted his hand on the stage. He did not decide in that second. He recognized a decision he had made earlier and now needed to put into air. He spoke. He listed. He turned toward Jaden. He promised specific corrections. He watched Jaden's face and saw not forgiveness and not even relief, but a posture of guarded belief, which was more than he deserved, and enough to continue the set, like musicians who still knew what a chord did to a room. The song after the speech carried a different temperature. Nathan felt his own body stop guarding the edges of his voice. He did not think about how a camera would frame him. He did not look for the red light. He sang the chorus the way it had existed when it was young, coarse and factual and 3% too fast, and Jaden matched him, not to flatter him, but to meet the song where it lived. When the last chord landed, they did not throw arms around each other or raise joined hands for a photograph. They nodded like men who had done a job that hurt but did not kill them. Backstage afterward, the machinery tried to resume its churn. The broadcast manager was polite and tense, asking for a statement in case affiliates complained. The label lawyer looked both disappointed and weirdly respectful, because she had seen too many liars to miss the difference between one more PR accident and someone finally calling his own behavior by its name. Nathan said he would write the statement himself, and for the first time in a long time, that sentence did not mean, "I will dodge." It meant, "I will be concrete." He went to the green room to sit for a minute. The fruit on the plate still went untouched. The cold fluorescent light still made everyone look either tired or ill. The photo on the mirror still sat there with tape curling at the corner. He pulled it off and put it in his jacket pocket like a person who needed reminders, not souvenirs. On his way out, he passed a small knot of people who had paid for better tickets and were now waiting for better access. He could read the faces that wanted selfie proof. He could also read a pair of eyes that wanted to tell him a long story about a divorce and a recovery and a song. He said thank you to one and not tonight, I am sorry to the other, and he did not hate himself for either sentence. Jaden stopped him by the loading dock door. "You did not ask my permission," Jaden said. "I did not," Nathan said. "Good," Jaden said. "You do not need permission to give back what you took." Then Jaden added, almost as an afterthought, "Check your email in the morning. I will forward a few old files that will help you correct the database mess." It was not a hug. It was not a reconciliation. It was exactly what it sounded like, an act of work. Nathan took it with the quiet respect it deserved. The scene ended there, not closure, but the start of labor. The city took over again, routine and indifferent and useful. Yellow cabs, damp air, a hot dog vendor arguing with a cop about stand placement, a bicycle delivery guy weaving through traffic with a giant insulated bag like a red shield strapped to his back. Nathan walked into a deli that had saved him at least 50 mornings without knowing it, and ordered a coffee in a thin paper cup and a small container of cut fruit because he needed something simple before he went home. He tipped too much because sometimes money was a fair thing to use, and then he stood there for a minute breathing in that clean, ordinary smell of chopped onions and bleach and industrial coffee. When he walked back out, his phone pinged. A text from Jaden. Okay. 2 letters, no punctuation, heavier than pages. A message from Hannah. That was real. A message from May. Dad, Wednesday is tomorrow. I want macaroni and cheese, not from a restaurant. He went home to the brick loft with the cranky fire escape outside the window. He set the old acoustic guitar on the kitchen table, where the light was better than in the studio. He put down the paper coffee cup so steam could curl up and disappear into nothing in front of him. He washed, dried, and clicked shut a clean lunchbox for the morning, putting in slices of apple, a small container of peanut butter, and a folded napkin, and he did not photograph any of it, because he finally understood that documenting care is different from doing care. He looked at the guitar and decided he would restring it tomorrow with light gauge he liked when he was 24, not because the string tone mattered, but because doing one small thing right might keep him honest in the next bigger thing. He pulled out a notepad and wrote a list that looked like a page from a household planner, because that was exactly the point. Call school, confirm pickup, ask May what time she wants dinner, buy cheddar and elbow pasta, check oven, find pot that is not scratched to death. Apologize to the neighbor for that late-night singing last week. Email accountant. Wire funds to Tom's scholarship. Draft the credit update. Schedule meeting with the woman who runs the jazz program. The list was not heroic. It was tender and banal and correct. He sat there a minute longer, the quiet clean rather than hollow. The city outside was still busy, and he was not pretending to be above it. He was inside a room where he could make small promises and keep them. He checked his calendar and deleted 2 appearances that looked like penance dressed as brand building. He sent 3 short emails of apology, each with 1 sentence of explanation and 1 concrete step attached. He sent May a photo of the lunchbox and the grocery receipt. She answered with a single word that made his eyes sting, because it was the kind of mercy children grant when adults finally behave like adults. "Cool," she wrote. This did not erase the past, did not remove the pain he had caused, and did not guarantee that everyone would meet him halfway. It did return to him the right to change with actions, not press quotes. Money did not wash betrayal, it only muffled the noise of internal shame until you named the fault, returned the debts, and changed the behavior. If you refused, you stood alone even on the biggest stage. If you accepted, you stood in a kitchen with an old guitar, a paper cup of coffee, and a clean lunchbox, which turned out to be a much better stage for a life.